Hey guys, Nick here, and welcome to my review of the new Netflix show, 13 Reasons Why. And I know for those of you who watch my videos regularly, this might not necessarily be the type of video you guys probably were expecting from me. Though I have been in the last couple of videos of mine said I was going to do this review. Because obviously this isn't like a superhero show or a genre-related show really, but there was something about this show that would just got me hooked instantly. And I didn't binge it in like a day or two. So my fiance and I watched it over the course of like 4 or 5 days, and it was a phenomenal show. And this show there's a lot to the show that because it brings up subjects that a lot of people don't really want to talk about, especially things that go on just in high school. And I feel like this show is one of those few shows that really depicts how high school can really be. And for me, it was kind of making me relive high school, and to be honest, I just did not like my high school experience. I was just I was picked on a lot early on in high school, and luckily I was able to get through all my problems with the help of my friends and family. And high school for me in general was rough for me because of being bullied on, and I lost my mom in high school. So I really resonated with this show because there were so many layers to it and so many characters I could really relate to, whether it was Clay or Hannah to an extent. I just found myself just being so drawn into the show and into these characters that I could not stop watching it. Even just my fiance, because my fiance read the book when it first came out. I never read the book. I'm not much of a reader, to be honest, but I've heard she spoke highly of the book, so I'm I'll give the show a shot. And at the time, it was the weekend it first came out, and everyone was talking about it. So I'm okay, I'll give it a shot. And then the first episode had me hooked, and I could not finish it. And it was one of those shows, and so overall my thoughts on the show. Again, I thought it was really, really well done, from the casting to the writing, and again tackling subjects that people for the most part are comfortable talking about, with suicide, sexual assault, rape, just a lot of issues that I feel like we as a society don't like talking about, and especially when it comes to high schoolers, because I feel like for the most part people are oh, you can get past high school, those are the worst years of your life, you just gotta get pushed through. But some people just as someone who struggled in high school, not just necessarily with high school but the whole high school experience, it's not as easy as you might think. Some people have they have a very positive look on their high school experience, and that's good for them, but not everyone has that same experience. A lot of people struggle with, whether it's struggling with depression or suicidal tendencies or any of these serious issues. I feel like this show gives us as a society a chance to see wow, what we say, especially what we say when we're younger, really affects people, and our actions do have consequences, even though we might not necessarily think so. And that's what I think, one of the things I think this show does really well. So obviously this show is, if you guys don't know, and obviously this is going to be a full spoiler review of the show, so I'm talking about everything that happens in the show. And so if you guys haven't watched the show, or maybe are interested in it and you don't mind being spoiled, then okay, that's good for you. But again, I'm just giving you guys a fair warning. So obviously the show is about it's about this girl, Hannah Baker, who obviously she is having a hard time throughout high school, and it ultimately leads to her killing herself. And before she kills herself, she makes 13 cassette tapes, each tape focusing on a person who she feels is a reason why she killed herself, and each tape focuses on a different person. And it goes through the list of the people who impacted her life, whether it was a minuscule amount to the people who physically were responsible for her feeling the way she feels. And in each tape you got more of an idea of who these people are, because at first you have an idea okay, this guy's an asshole, this girl's kind of shady, you think some of these characters, but then at the same time you kind of don't. And then these tapes kind of bring up how shitty some of these people can really be, and how actually these tapes almost make some of these people regretful of their actions and start to want to change. And especially in characters like Alex and even Zach, I feel, and to the same extent I could even say what's her name, no, not Jessica, the other one. Sorry, I forgot her name. But just in general, I just feel like the way this show handled its characters was really well done, because you had characters like I would say like your core three characters that you're really kind of rooting for were Clay, Hannah, and Hannah's mom. And Hannah's mom was portrayed amazingly by Kate Walsh, who was in the show Private Practice, and that was like a Shonda Rhimes show, all of a sudden like the Grey's Anatomy universe, if you want to call it that. And she did an amazing job just handling this broken woman who just lost her teenage daughter, and she's just trying to figure out why. And just like sometimes I thought she was a little too good for the show. Not the show was bad. I just like she just was such an amazing actress in this, and I just like. And my girlfriend, or my fiance, sorry, she knows more about Kate Walsh, and she actually, like, literally right before we started the show, just got an autograph from Kate Walsh that from this thing she did. She can, if you donate to this charity or whatever, you get a T-shirt and an autograph from her. So, it's funny that just happened. But so she knows more about Kate Walsh than I do. So my only exposure to Kate Walsh is this show. So I went in, I'm like, okay, so at first I'm like, okay, yeah, she's really good, and then each episode she just. I feel like she was one of the emotional hearts of the show, at least in the present day, because obviously the show relies heavily on the flashbacks sequences, giving us an idea of who Hannah is and like what's going on with her. And again, each episode you really get the sense of just like how cruel some of these people are. And so each tape, again, focusing on a different person. The first tape starting with Justin Foley, who was a character who I hated pretty much from start to finish. And towards the end of the show, they tried to humanize him more, and that he was kind of slowly starting to come to the realization that he has to do the right thing, because again, this is getting into heavy spoilers, and this is a big issue. So obviously, in one of the tapes, you find out that the character of Bryce, who's Justin's friend, raped Justin's girlfriend Jessica at Jessica's party. Not too long before Hannah commits suicide, and Jessica kind of just lets him, and he kept that a secret from Jessica for so long, and it was eating up at him to the point where like one day, Jessica was hanging out with Bryce because her and Justin just had this big fight or whatever, and then finally comes out that he fucking raped you, and then that just causes everything just kind of go downhill in terms of for Jessica having to face that, because just Jessica just didn't want to admit it, because everyone on the tapes everyone on the tapes thinks that, or for the most part, they all think that Hannah's lying, and that she's like, oh, Hannah's again just spreading shit about us. But by the end of it, they all know that like they're in deep shit, and that's why like when they're all being questioned for the trial, which Hannah's parents against the school, they'll kind of finally start to tell the truth. And there are a couple of characters in this, like I already mentioned Justin, who I really just hated, because you're kind of supposed to hate them. So obviously Justin, Bryce is the worst character in this show. Not because it was the actor did a fine job and all that, but like obviously Bryce is a rapist. Bryce is a terrible fucking person. Like, and you find out that you find out when he first rapes Jessica, you're like, oh my god, like, and you already hate him just for that, and he was already kind of just like not a good guy from when he like forcibly grabbed Hannah's ass after she was on that list. And because at first I'm like, oh, Bryce seems like a nice guy, like, and the actor did a good job, so it's like up until the whole Hannah thing, or him grabbing her ass, then I'm like, oh, he's just another high school jock guy. And then you find out how shitty he is, and then you find out by tape 12 he raped Hannah too. And you really want him to fucking get arrested. And that's why I thought it was so great by the end when Clay like tapes Bryce's confession, like admitting to the rape of Hannah, that just pretty much anyone who watched the show, we all agree that Bryce is a terrible fucking person. So we can all at least agree on that. But the actor did a good job, but you're supposed to hate the character, because again, he's a rapist first and foremost, and that's just obviously automatically it makes him a shitty person. And then another character who I hate just Courtney, because at first like you feel like she was actually trying to be nice, and then her and Hannah, the reason why she's on the tape is because her and Hannah like make out one night, and then Tyler took a picture of it and showed it to everyone, and then Courtney spread this rumor about Hannah being like in a three-way, I think, from what I can remember from that episode. And Courtney ultimately denying any sort of involvement because Courtney was raised by two gay dads, and she didn't want to perpetuate the stereotype that gay parents raise gay children, and so she kept that a secret. But then she would go on to just defend Bryce, calling him an alleged rapist, and just like, you just really go on to hate Courtney. She's just a really shitty person who just in this day and age, like, do you really have to keep your sexuality a secret? Especially when you have two gay dads who are gonna love you no matter what. Or just in general, parents feel like for the most part accepting, especially in this show when we saw her two dads, like, they seem like genuinely caring guys. So like, obviously she don't want to perpetuate that stereotype, but it's like, come on, it's 2017. You can come out to your parents. Like, it's dumb that she even did that. So that's where you go on to like just hate her and realize that she's just a shitty person too. Another person I hate as well is Marcus. Marcus was a piece of shit. Another guy who tried to like force himself on Hannah because he heard that she was easy, which is again going into one of the reasons why Hannah killed herself. And I really, really hated Marcus. And at first, Marcus I thought was a nice guy, but then of course you get to his tape and find out what he did, and you just like, you really dislike the guy. And the fact that he's being he's just another asshole. I don't need to keep going into all these people I hate. Holy crap! I've already been talking for 11 minutes, and I haven't even gotten to like the beef of what I love about this show. So for me, I loved the characters of Clay and Tony in the present day. I do wish that we got a little more backstory with Tony and Hannah, because obviously she was the one who gave him the tapes, and he was the one she entrusted to carry out her last wishes of getting these tapes to everyone. And I just wish they would show a little bit more of that. But Tony was a great character. Him and Clay's dynamic. But the only thing that bothered me about him was in the episode where in Clay's tape, when Clay asks him, was I responsible for Hannah's death? And he says yes. And then you ultimately find out that in Clay's tape that he's not really responsible. And the only reason why he's on the tape is because Hannah thought that he was an important part of her life, that he needed to be included in her story, not that he's necessarily a reason for killing her. And that's why I thought that, like, because the whole build up to Clay's tape was like, everyone's talking about like, wait till you hear your tape, Jensen, and then like he's worrying about his tape and all that, and it's just like there's obviously romantic tension between between Clay and Hannah, that you want them to get together, and then they do have the one night of them at the party, and then they make out, and then she pushes him because she's going back into her head about being touched or being treated like shit because of Justin and the rape that she just saw from Jessica's party and all that stuff, and then that leads to her yelling at him, telling him to get out, when internally she wanted him to stay, and that's was more or less kind of like the end of their friendship before she died, where he just like stopped talking to her. But in his tape, I just feel like what she tells him, I don't think is necessarily a reason enough for him to think that he was responsible for her death, and so that's why it's just like that the whole build up to it, you thought it was gonna be something a lot worse than what it was, but then you just find out that she just had romantic feelings for him, and that like obviously it's gonna make him feel like shit because he was always pining for her and he was always jealous of her going after these guys, and you saw that, and I get that him being upset for that, but I don't think that's reason enough for him to think that he was responsible for Hannah committing suicide, because it wasn't. And I gotta say, Dylan Minnette, who played Clay, did an amazing job with this character. The one thing that did kind of bother me was the makeup for his scar, because I guess it makes sense to have like a distinguishing factor between the present day and the flashbacks, so that way you can tell like, oh, this is because the show cuts between the flashbacks and the present day so much to the point where it is a little confusing sometimes. But the whole makeup on the scar, his scar looked really bad, so that's why like when they just did the Band-Aid, they might as well have just kept the Band-Aid on, because it would have saved you time and makeup, and it just made more sense to just do that, because the scar, I don't think it looked good, because it didn't even look natural, and it just stayed on for way too long, in my opinion. But no, just a minor thing. But again, Clay I thought did really well. I loved seeing his dynamic again with Tony, and him being kind of like the only person on the tapes who's really trying to fight for Hannah. I mean, yeah, you kind of get like Alex in the end starting to feel guilty for what he did, and even Zach to an extent. But he was the one like fighting for Hannah. And I think one of the most powerful scenes in the entire show is that hallway scene when he's showing around the foreign exchange students, and he kind of goes off, and he's talking about, the truth's gonna come out, and like everyone acts so nice until they drive you to kill yourself, and it's just like, that was one of the most best acted scenes, well written scenes in the entire show, because again, just like, a lot of people don't want to talk about suicide, and especially suicide in teens, and the show you're like forced to accept that truth, that people are. I'm just trying to figure out how to word this. There are so many people suffering in the world right now, and a lot of times we don't realize that our actions do have serious consequences, and that what we say can affect another person's life, whether we know it or not. And that's, for me, suffering growing up. I suffered with depression, especially after my mom passed away, and I dealt with bullying and all that stuff. And I'm gonna get a little even more personal. If you guys have been on my channel, you guys know I've talked about my mom's death and stuff like that in the past. But this is getting really personal, so if you guys don't judge me for this. This is just me being honest about my own experiences dealing with this kind of stuff. And there was a point when I was younger when I contemplated suicide, and this is again at the peak of my depression and my mom dying, and I was having I was just going through a lot. And then I took out my frustrations on my dad and my stepmom, even though they were ultimately the ones who were always there for me. Even though they were trying their best, I was just pushing them away, blaming them, and just taking out my frustrations on them for everything. And I just at the time, and I felt like I had no one, because I feel like I was losing friends. I only had a couple of friends who were actually there for me through everything. And I got to that point where I wanted to end my life, and I ended up being put into a youth mental hospital for a few days. And while I was there, I saw a lot of people. I'm not I don't name names or anything like that, but I saw a lot of people who were suffering way worse than I was, who were dealing with substance abuse issues, or who were dealing with being molested, who were dealing with all these serious things that were not to say that I wasn't allowed to be depressed because of my mom, but who had things so much worse than me. And to put things in perspective for me, yes, losing my mom sucked, and it still sucks, and it's still something I think about, and something I have to deal with every day. But people have it so much worse than me, and I have to, at least for my mom's sake, be able to live on and to lead a happy life. And no matter what I go through, I have to realize that I just have to keep pushing on. And for me, I was able to get out of that. And watching this show, it sucks because by the end of the show, Hannah kills herself, and you already knew that from the beginning, but a part of you kind of hope, oh, maybe she's still alive. But then one of the hardest scenes to watch was that suicide scene, and it just the show was a real hit in the feels, and just that was a poor choice of words, I know, but there's so much to the show that, again, it hits you emotionally, because these are real issues that real people go through. And whether it's just depression in general, or again, just going through the shittiness of high school and being told that you're a slut and being picked on and bullied and abused and all this stuff. And one thing I also liked about the show is that the focus wasn't just on Hannah and Clay, that there was somewhat of a focus, and you guys see a little bit more of Justin's backstory with his mom and the physical and mental abuse from her boyfriend, and her ultimately not being there for Justin, which still doesn't make Justin a good person, because he's going through some real shit. But again, I'm not saying that Justin's a shitty person. Maybe he did that. His life has made him a shitty person, but I do feel bad for him and what he went through in that show. But at the same time, he was suggesting to kill Clay, so I can't sympathize with the guy, really. But again, I really think that this show did a really good job of handling all of their characters really well. And obviously, I can't go on talking about the show without talking about its lead, and Hannah Baker, who was portrayed by Catherine. Sorry, let me just get her last name here. Catherine Langford. I was gonna say Langston, but she did such an amazing job with this show. Considering this is her first really big acting gig, and she did an incredible job in giving us a character who you really come to know and love and really feel for. And each episode, you see this kind and lighthearted person just slowly just not drifting away, but just you can just see her getting you see her mental state almost getting worse and worse and worse. Her outlook on life is becoming more and more bleak. I mean, obviously she's suicidal, ends up killing herself. So you know that she's that way, but just seeing her go through that journey and just see, and for someone who I've never seen act before, she did an amazing job, and you feel for her, and you're rooting. Like at the end of the day, you almost wish that she was alive at the end of the show and she like faked her death or something. But just because you see her and you see her with Clay and their romance that slowly building up, and then ultimately just because of her killing herself, it can't go any further, and it sucks. And then you just feel for her, and just especially in the final episode, with the final episode being Mr. Porter's tape, who's the counselor, you really feel for her in that aspect of just like, here's this guy who's supposed to be like, it's like her last straw. This is like her last chance to just find something worth living for. And she goes on to this guy and talk to her about a rape, and he's basically saying, gotta move on. And that's all he says to her. And that's where she's like, you know what, fuck this, I'm done. I mean, she doesn't necessarily say that, but that's just for her. Like, that was some of the most powerful acting from Catherine that we've seen in the show. Because, you just see her just like at rock bottom, and you just, like, you want to be able to shout at her and be like, no, don't do it. Like, all these people, like, Clay cares about you and your parents. Like, you just want to tell her that there's so much worth living for. But at the end of the day, and that's kind of like the reality of it, and is sometimes you're just too late. And you can't always tell these people that there's something worth living for. And coming from someone who lost a parent, like, I more than anything want to go back in time and tell my mom how much I loved her and take the opportunity to just try to save her, but you can't. I mean, that's just not the way the world works. And this show just is another example of that. You want to hope that she's there at the end of the show, but she's really not, and it sucks because you grow into and you fall in love with these characters, and you fall in love with Hannah, and her tragic story, and you just because she's like the lead of the show, you want to like root for her, and now that she's gone, it's like, what is there to root for now? Especially because like this show ended very openly. Like, there's a very open ended to where like if they want to do a season 2, they can, because they set some things up. Because you find out that supposedly Alex shoots himself in the head because you see someone in the ambulance, and then the principal comes into the end of the episode and says Alex shot himself, and then you see Tyler, who, because of the events in the show, because of him being a stalker, Clay went to his house, took a picture of him naked, and leaked it to the school, which led to Tyler wanting to get involved in the group, and Tyler gets a gun. Then you see a stash of guns and heavy weaponry, suggesting he could potentially be a school shooter. And they're obviously setting that up to it. If they want to do another season of the show, they can. But as a fan of the show, I don't know if it's necessarily appropriate to do another season because ultimately Hannah's story is over. And yeah, you could say like we've invested enough in these characters between Clay and Tony and Jessica and Alex and all these people that you want to see what happens next with them. But at the same time, the show kind of starts and ends with Hannah. So it's hard to tell a story that's not Hannah's story, because this whole thing was about 13 Reasons Why. And yeah, you can say, oh, well, they set up with Tyler and he had all those images and those can be his 13. Yeah, you could do that, but then I feel like you're kind of like diluting the story, and it's not as meaningful because it's no longer about Hannah. It's because the book is only one book. It's not like a whole series of books that they can base it off of. It's a 13 episode show. There's 13 reasons why, and those 13 reasons are done. So they can do a second season, and I would watch a second season, but I don't necessarily want a second season because, again, I don't think it's necessarily appropriate. Even though I would want to see these characters again, I would say maybe do like a little mini series, like a 3-episode thing, just to kind of finish up the case with their parents and against the school. Finish up with storyline with Tyler and Alex, and then again just wrap things up. But other than that, I don't know if I don't want another 13 episodes. Again, I would watch it if they renew it, which they probably will, because everyone's talking about this show. Every day on Facebook, I'm finding someone new watching the show or finishing the show or raving about the show or whatever. So I get like the hype around it, and obviously because I love the show, and then again, like I get why they would want to do a second season and set it up for a second season. But again, I just because of the content of the show, I don't know if it's necessarily appropriate for them to do so. But again, this show was really, really well done. I know there's some stuff I didn't really get into, but I've been talking for like over 20 minutes at this point. You guys probably have better things to do than listen to me. But I think with that being said, that's going to be it for me. So what did you guys think of 13 Reasons Why? I know this is a bit of a controversial show and brings up a lot of controversial topics. So what were some of the things, at least in your guys' mind, that stood out to you in the show? What you guys liked about it, whether it's acting or the characters or the or whatever. Sound your thoughts in the usual place in the comments section below. Give this video a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button for all the other content that I do on my channel. Earlier today, I just did my reaction review to the brand new Star Wars The Last Jedi trailer. The other day, I reacted to the brand new Thor trailer. You guys check out all my other videos, and I also review The Flash, Supergirl, and Arrow on my channel. You guys check those out when the show comes back in a couple weeks. If you guys are into the superhero shows, as well as any of the other videos on my channel. Thank you guys for watching me and watching my video. And until next time, have a good one.